Hey there, everyone. Welcome to a super special storybook edition of The Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're hanging out with me today because we are about to step right inside an incredible animated tale. Get ready to use those imaginations because today we're exploring a classic story all about brains, bravery, and a very tricky little hero.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to really picture this for a second. Can a tiny tailor, a guy who just sits around all day sewing clothes with a needle and thread, can he actually defeat a massive mountain-sized giant? And get this, using nothing but a smelly old piece of cheese and a little bird? No way, right? Well, let's find out exactly how this crazy adventure goes down.
Chapter 1. The Tailor and the Flies. So, let's set the scene. It's a perfectly normal, beautiful summer morning. Our hero, a little tailor, is just sitting by his window, happily stitching away at a jacket. But, oh man, he was getting hungry. He just wanted a quick snack. So he grabs this big loaf of bread from his cupboard, cuts a huge slice, and smears it thick with delicious sweet jam. He thinks to himself, oh yeah, that is going to be good. But he wants to finish his sewing first, so he sets the bread down. Well, that sweet, jammy smell drifts right out the window, and guess who crashes the party? A massive swarm of flies. They just dive-bomb right onto his snack. The tailor yells, "Hey, who invited you?" and tries to shoo them away. But those pesky little guys just keep coming back, and there's more of them every second.
Finally, the little tailor completely loses his temper. He grabs a heavy piece of cloth, shouts, "All right, now you're gonna get it," and brings it down with all his might. Smack! When he lifts the cloth to check the damage, there are no fewer than 7 flies lying completely flat, little legs straight up in the air. He actually got 7 of them with just one single blow. Chapter 2. A Very Brave Banner.
Now, taking out 7 flies all at once? That made the little tailor feel pretty darn spectacular about himself. He was literally amazed at his own bravery. He proudly declares, the whole world needs to hear about this. So putting those awesome sewing skills to work, he cuts out a banner and stitches some big, bold letters right across it, 7 with one blow. He ties this awesome belt right around his waist, looks around, and decides his tiny workshop is just way too small for a guy with this much bravery. It was time to head out into the wide world.
But hey, before you go on any grand adventure, you gotta pack, right? Well, the tailor had a pretty bizarre packing list. He looks around his house for supplies, and all he finds is a piece of old cheese, which he just shoves deep into his pocket. Then, right as he's walking out the town gate, he finds a little bird caught in a bush. Yep, into the pocket it goes, right next to the cheese. Now kids, I need you to make me a promise. Keep these 2 weird little items in the back of your mind. Trust me, they are going to be super important later on.
Off he goes, just wandering and wandering. Eventually, our little tailor stumbles right into the courtyard of a massive royal palace. He's totally exhausted from his trip, so he just flops down on the grass and falls fast asleep. But here's where it gets interesting. While he's snoozing, people from the palace come out and start crowding around him. And what do they read on his chest? Yep, that big, bragging banner, 7 with one blow.
Chapter 3. Meeting the Huge Giant.
The people reading that banner sprint straight to the king, which kicks off the king's big mission. The courtiers tell the king that a mighty warrior who defeated 7 with one blow would be incredibly handy to have around if a war ever started. So the king calls for the tailor and makes him a deal he simply cannot refuse. The king tells him, "Listen, there's this giant terrorizing the town. If you can get rid of him, you can marry my daughter and I'll give you half my entire kingdom." The little tailor thinks, wow, it's not every day someone offers you a beautiful princess and half a kingdom. So he bravely agrees. He leaves 100 royal horsemen behind at the edge of the forest and heads off to face the monster completely alone.
I've got to ask, what would you do if you had to march up a mountain to face a giant all by yourself? Would you turn around and run? Well, our brave little tailor was light and agile, so he didn't even get tired. He marches right up to the very top of the mountain. And right there, just sitting happily on a rock and looking around, is a colossal, terrifying giant.
But the tailor doesn't run away. Instead, he cheerfully struts right up to this massive dude and says in his most confident, squeaky little voice, "Good day, comrade." Then he unbuttons his coat so the giant gets a clear view of that famous banner. Now, the giant reads 7 with one blow out loud in this slow, rumbling, booming voice. But guys, the giant makes a massive mistake. He has no clue the tailor is talking about houseflies. The giant thinks this tiny little guy took out 7 full-grown men with a single punch. Because of that little misunderstanding, the giant actually gets a bit of respect for the little tailor.
Chapter 4. Tricking the Big Giant.
So this is where brains finally meet brawn. The giant still isn't totally convinced. He looks down at this tiny tailor and decides he wants to test his strength. He challenges him, saying, "If you're really that strong, do what I just did." It's officially time for a giant-sized competition to answer the ultimate question: who is actually stronger?
Okay, here's test number 1, squeezing water. First, the giant grabs a solid stone and squeezes it in his massive fist so incredibly hard that actual water drips right out of it. I mean, wow. But the clever little tailor, he doesn't pick up a rock. Remember his pocket? He secretly reaches in, pulls out that squishy old piece of cheese, and squeezes it in his hand until the liquid runs right out of it. To the giant, it completely looks like the tailor is effortlessly squeezing water out of a solid rock.
The giant is totally tricked. He literally doesn't know what to say because he simply cannot believe this tiny little man has super strength that rivals his own. But hey, the giant isn't done just yet. He demands a second test.
Bring on test number 2, the throw. The giant scoops up a stone and chucks it so incredibly high into the sky that you can barely even see it before it finally plummets back down to earth. He tells the tailor to do the exact same thing. The tailor smirks and says, "Hey, a good throw, but the stone still fell back down. I'll throw one for you that will never come back." He reaches into that magic pocket of his, but instead of a stone, he grabs the little bird. He throws it straight up into the air. The bird, so excited to finally be free, flies up, away, and, just like the tailor promised, it never comes back down. The giant totally thinks the tailor just launched a rock straight into outer space. So, what's the result of all this trickery? The giant is absolutely terrified of this impossibly strong little tailor. The giant actually flees. He runs far, far away from the town, never to be seen again. And the king? Well, he keeps his promise and marries his beautiful daughter to the tailor. So the clever little tailor who just swatted 7 flies ends up becoming a king, and he remains a great king for the rest of his life.
Chapter 5: The True Meaning of Strength. You know, our story actually teaches us a really wonderful lesson. Kindness and courage dictate your true behavior. See, once the tailor became king, he didn't go around tricking people anymore. He ruled with genuine kindness and courage. He always remembered that his true strength didn't come from how big he was, but from his quick, clever mind and his very brave heart.
Now, let's see how this awesome story can build our vocabulary today. Our first word is bravery, which means actions that are done without fear. Just think about the little tailor marching right up that mountain to face a terrifying giant without a single drop of fear. Now that is true bravery.
Our next big word is agile, meaning able to move quickly and easily. Because our little tailor was so light and agile on his feet, he was able to hike all the way up that steep mountain to find the giant without getting tired at all.
And speaking of getting tired, our final vocabulary word for today is weary, which simply means tired. Remember how the little tailor felt after wandering all over the world? He was so weary that he just crashed and took a long nap right in the middle of the royal courtyard. And just like that, we've reached the end of our storybook journey. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final inspiring question to think about. What amazing things can your cleverness help you achieve today? Just like the little tailor who used his brain to outsmart a massive giant, you have incredible power right there in your mind to solve some pretty huge problems. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this explainer today. Keep being brave, keep being clever, and I'll catch you next time.